So this is a 70's 325. Must be about a 73. I don't get particular on the years. It's a 70's, you know what I mean? So this is 325 serial number, so that's probably a 73, maybe 72. What do we notice about this thing? First thing I'm going to do, what I do with every 70's, is just put my magic stick on there. And judge stick that I've been using for decades. Probably what's going to happen with this one is it's going to wear out just like Martin's did, and I'm going to be off pretty soon. But it's a yardstick, so it's pretty logical. If you haven't seen this before, a lot of you guys are new. I have marked on here where the bass and the treble should be. This red mark right here at just past 13 and 7/8 of an inch, just a hair past that, is where I want the contact point for the E string. And the other one in front of it with the T is where I want the contact point for the treble. Experience has just shown me that that's where the saddle contact point needs to be. I put the yardstick again right in the middle of the 12th fret and bring it over here, and this one is a full eighth of an inch off, which is not uncommon. As the second check, what I always do is bring this to the body right here. Let's go over here where you can see it. I bring it right to the body, just put my finger on there, and I look at the bridge, and the bridge should be 11 and an eighth of an inch. This is a second check, because on this guitar, the bridge is in fact 11 and an eighth of an inch. Over here, over here, it's in between. It's just barely past 11. So this bridge is not on there straight. I'm going to double check that. Yeah, we're fully 11 and an eighth over here on the treble, and not quite on the bass side. So this bridge is crooked. It's crooked this way. That's not uncommon. I want the saddle though. Yeah. So eighth of an inch off over here on the bass side. Clearly an eighth of an inch off. And over on the treble side, we're an eighth of an inch off too. So the saddle's off by an eighth of an inch. I've gone through all these options in other videos, but real quickly, you have the option of moving the saddle slot back on here if you want to. But then the saddle starts sitting into the middle of the bridge. It's got to get too close to the low E string. I don't want to do that. Some people will move the pins back to compensate for that. And, then you just, like I've said before, every solution is ugly in some way or another. There are, let's see, how many common solutions? I don't know. The first solution, the one that I usually pick, is to scoot the bridge back. I like to do that because it puts the bridge in a slightly different place on the X bracing, which makes it a little bit more like a pre-war Martin, where the X bracing is farther forward, therefore the bridge sits back on the X. It's not quite the same because I didn't shift the X bracing forward, but it does scoot the bridge back a little bit further. There's going to be a scar in front of here, right here, where I scoot the bridge. There's going to be a scar of about an eighth of an inch. But again, one more time, what I do with this, when I have this bridge off, I'm going to trim about an eighth of an inch off the back of it, because 70's bridges are wider front to back than 50's and 30's Martin bridges. So by trimming the rear back, I make it a little bit more like a 30's, 40's, 50's bridge. I have a model of a 50's bridge. I have an actual 50's bridge over there I use as a model. By doing that, I don't take much, if any, finish off the back here. So really I have the same footprint on the guitar, I just have a scar in front of it. Therefore, if you wanted to go back to the original bridge, well, the original bridge has been modified, but you could go back to the original size bridge if you wanted to restore originality and play out of tune again. That's my favorite option. I'm always doing a new bridge plate in here. 70's have that great big huge fat rosewood bridge plate, which I've covered before. So I'm always doing a new bridge plate. I'm getting new holes. I'm going to plug holes. And to me, the best solution overall is to just scoot the bridge back. If you scoot the saddle back, there's a lot of controversy about this. Some people say that, well, it still works the same because it bounces the top this way. Yeah, but I just don't see that. I see a fulcrum point. And the way I think of this is a bookshelf, okay? If you build a bookshelf and you make a floor platform like this, it balances. And it's hard to push that bookshelf back. It's hard to push the bookshelf forward because the base is even. If you put the floor support at the very front edge of the bookshelf, you can easily push the bookshelf backwards because there's nothing back here supporting it. Yeah, they've got the weight of the platform and it'll come up off the top like this, but it won't come forward. So if I move this saddle, just to say, if I move this saddle clear to the back of the bridge, I'll have the entire front of the bridge acting as a fulcrum, and it's not going to want to lean forward like this, you see. It's like a Gibson, where they reverse the thing. It's a lot more stuff on front right here. Now the X brace is there. It prevents that from tilting a little bit, so it's not quite like a bookshelf, but it's the same concept to me. So if I got this right here with the saddle right here and all that bridge in the front, it's not going to want to rotate forward. If I move the base to the back like this, that bridge, is going to tilt forward real easy. It's going to work the back of the guitar more. So that's why I don't like scooting the saddle to the middle of the bridge, and I don't like really moving the pins back. I will do that. I have done that in the past before I started scooting bridges. And then once I just got over it and said, we're just going to have a scar on there. And when I look at a bridge where the saddle has been scooted back, we got one over here actually. Saddle has been scooted back, the pins have been moved back. To me, that's ugly. It doesn't look like a 30s, 40s, 50s, that looks ugly. But that's an option, okay? Another option that I always have is when I'm doing a neck reset, and almost every one of these 70s needs a neck reset, you can put a shim under the heel right here, and you can actually pull the neck this way. That is not a bad option. You have a shim under the heel right here, which can be ugly. You can make it look pretty good. My preference usually is to make that shim dark. I just make it black. Let the world know there's a shim there because you're not going to hide it perfectly. You're never going to hide it perfectly. So my preference there, I thought I was going to be fast getting through this, but I'm giving you a rehash. I get a lot of new viewers who are not familiar with these concepts. So a shim into the heel right here is not a bad option. You've got to trim the dovetail down. And if you're going to do a big shim, your fingerboard is not going to go to the edge of the rosette here like it should. And you're going to have a little bit of a scar at the end of the fingerboard, which is generally less objectionable than having a scar right here at the bridge. However, you're going to have that option, okay? However, you don't get the advantage of moving it back on the X brace, which I think is kind of important. I mean, it's important to the sound that I get out of a modified 70s. I have done the shim in cases where, for some reason or another, I didn't want to move the bridge. Maybe you've got a really pristine top, This one's got some finish checks on it. It's got some scratches and dings. It's beat up here. So at this point, cosmetics are, to me, are out of the window. I don't care about a scar under here. It's chewed up right here. It's got a bee sting crack. The finish is cracked. But if this was a really pristine finish and I really wanted to preserve, let's say you have a Sunburst D45, You got a Sunburst D45 with a pristine top. Ooh, I'm going to be a little reluctant to move that bridge back, I've been pretty good at matching the finish color on the 70s. And if you go find my video on the Tone Quest Report guitar, those are both Sunburst guitars, and I scooted the bridge in both cases. And the color match was really, really good. I got lucky on that one. But if you had a pristine top, for some reason or another, you didn't want to scoot the bridge, a shim under the neck here is a pretty valid thing. And also, if I have to scoot it, like say, 1/4 of an inch, which I've had to do before, maybe I don't want 1/4 of an inch scar on the front. So what I might do then is I might put an 1/8 of an inch shim into here and scoot the bridge an 1/8 of an inch and compromise the two so I don't end up with a great big ugly scar right here. So putting a shim into the heel right here, moving the whole thing back like that, is a valid option in your bag of tricks. The other option, what are we up to, 4 now, is to actually put a different fingerboard on here with a shorter scale. John Arnold likes to do that. I respect John Arnold tremendously. I don't generally do that because, for one, it's a lot of work. You know, you got to pull the fingerboard. You're going to have to get a whole new fingerboard and put on there. Now the originality is out the window totally. You're going to refret it. It's going to cost a lot of money. Scooting the bridge is not that big of a deal. It's not going to cost you a lot of money. It's going to cost about $60, $75, whatever. As opposed to putting a new fingerboard on, it's going to be $500. However, putting a new fingerboard on there is certainly an option. Put a little bit slightly shorter scale, but then I don't get the full length scale. When I scoot that bridge back, I get the full length as God and C.F. Martin intended, whatever the scale is. 12 7/8 times 2, 25.4 inch scale. I get the full scale. And when you put a different fingerboard on here and you keep this at 1/8 of an inch short, it's a slightly shorter scale. Longer scales and shorter scales have certain sounds and feels to them. I've never done the fingerboard, actually. But it's an option. You know, again, maybe you have a pristine D45 sunburst or something like that where you don't want to shim into here and you don't want to scoot the bridge. Well, your next, probably the most cosmetically pure solution is a shorter fingerboard. The 15th fret will come up, 14th fret will come up just a little bit because it's a shorter scale. It's not going to line up right there on the edge of the body. Nobody's going to notice that unless they're real picky. One other option. I've got a video on this, and that's using nut compensation. And what I did on that video, I put an ebony shim, spacer, if you will, in front of the nut right here. So right here, I got a video on it. Go look for nut compensation, okay, in my videos. I put an ebony spacer right up here so that the string contact point was farther forward, and I should have demonstrated the intonation. I didn't demonstrate the intonation as well as I should have in that video. And a lot of people are like, oh, that can't work. Oh, it doesn't work. Well, it did work, you know. I wouldn't have done it. I should have run it on the tuner to demonstrate that. And that was, I could do it on this one real quick to show you. You can use a toothpick, just to demonstrate. That was didn't change a single thing about the guitar because an ebony spacer you can quickly remove. It doesn't leave anything lasting. The disadvantage of that is that you don't have the strings resting on a bone nut. However, a lot of great guitars have ebony nuts. Norman Blake ran ebony nut for a while. I've run ebony nuts on guitars. Certain very old Martins, 31s, around the early 30s, OM 28s, things like that. Some of those had ebony nuts on them. There's a certain sound to ebony nut. It's not a bad sound. It tempers out, maybe it softens the bite of the open strings. It's a pretty easy solution. You get to keep this nut. You have to cut kind of nut slots in that ebony, you still got to set the height the same. But what you would do is you would take your bone nut and you would cut your slots a little bit deeper so that the strings rested on that spacer. So it becomes a 0 fret is what it becomes. You could put a 0 fret in there, but then you got this ugly 0 fret, that looks not right on a Martin guitar. An ebony spacer in front is almost invisible. You'll have to really look at it. And, like I said, it makes no damage whatsoever to the guitar. However, you end up with a shorter scale again because you haven't changed this scale, and you actually end up with functionally a shorter scale because you put a spacer here. So that's one option. I ought to just go get a toothpick and show you that it does in fact work. So let me get a toothpick. Here's a toothpick. First thing we're going to do is we're going to use my strobe tuner here. We're going to tune this low E up. This is getting complicated. Really, already? Okay, the E is in tune. Let's see if it's still in tune this way. Yeah, good enough. Tuner, let's get away from the microphone so you can see it. 12th fret. Let's just go to the G here. I can't see it, so let's flip this around so I can see it. I can see how sharp we are. Pretty sharp. It's spinning, okay? Now, take this toothpick and I'm going to stick it right up under here. Like that. Return. Because, of course, it's going to be a little sharp now. Okay, here's what we got. And here's a G. I expect the E is going to be a little bit short because the action's high on this guitar. And I'm stretching the string down. So, let's see what I got. I got to look at it myself here. G is pretty good. E is still a little bit sharp. So what I would want to do here is now move this toothpick forward a little bit more, which should be forward a little bit more. Return. Pretty good. Now it's actually flat. Yeah, a little flat. Pretty good. So let's look at that. Flat. Should be flat. I can't see it. So the toothpick doesn't need to go quite that far. Wiggle it back just a little. Well, if you're paying attention, you can see that when you put a nut spacer in there, you could actually compensate each individual string a little bit if you needed to, you know. I generally don't do that. I generally take the compensation at the saddle. It's not bad. Let's look at that. And again, because this action's high, that's not, I would do this tuning after I got this action. But you can see that I corrected the intonation very quickly and simply by just putting a toothpick in this case. This is how far forward it is. So that's an option, you know. The only thing bad about that is that being an ebony nut on there, there's a good chance it's going to chip and break after, you know, years. You could put a bone one in there, but then you got a big fat looking nut up there, which I kind of object to the, you know. Okay, so but there's some options for 70s intonation. In fact, I ought to just cut this right here and call this 70s intonation video, which I may do. So, but there's your options for correcting intonation. I like to scoot the bridge.